The Suicide Squad features a collection of the most degenerate delinquents in the DC lineup, including Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Captain Boomerang, Ratcatcher 2, Savant, King Shark, Blackguard, Javelin, and everyone's favorite psycho, Harley Quinn, who will do anything to get out of prison, even joining the super-secret, super-shady Task Force X on a do-or-die mission to a remote, enemy-filled island. Now, regardless of where you stand on the first iteration of the supervillain movie with a very similar name, James Gunn has created a wildly fun and violent comic book adventure. I had a blast with this. The way the story is told utilizes a back and forth type of progression where we'll see events and then go back 5 minutes, or sometimes 3 weeks. We don't linger in the past unnecessarily, but the content we get helps to build out the context, creating a much more impactful scene. The titles are also uniquely done. These provide small contextual clues to where we are in the timeline or when the scene transitions to a different character in another portion of the story. They're kind of like transition panels in a comic book, and each time they were creatively executed. Now, we get considerable backstory on the characters without the burden to do flashbacks for every single one of them. And I like that just about each character gets the opportunity to shine. There are moments that highlight certain qualities in them, allowing them to take center stage, even if it's brief, which then allows for this to be a true ensemble performance. Idris Elba's character of Bloodsport is extremely tough, but I love the infusion of a weakness in his armored tough guy image. There are instances where his regularness pokes through, which then allows us to connect with him on a completely different level. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn continues to steal scenes, and I'm glad that she was included because her character brings so much randomness to the screen. We get a small taste of how she is in the trailers, but she continues to be one of the best characters in the DC film universe. There's the inclusion of a couple of characters that I was completely unfamiliar with. Ratcatcher 2 and Polka Dot Man. And both of the names are just utterly ridiculous, but I like that the movie acknowledges that. Both, though, also get some really great development in very short periods of time, and they were amazing characters in their own rights. Ratcatcher 2 has warmth and compassion, and I really enjoyed how that works to humanize some other characters. Polka Dot Man is quirky and was really one of my favorites because of how vulnerable he was, and also how dark his story is revealed to be. And for the first time, I really liked John Cena as an actor. He was tough and funny and was able to not take himself too seriously, which then made him very endearing and likable. There's this scene with him in a bar, and he's got just clothes on that are way too small for him. I mean, he's a big guy. And the visual of him dancing with this very tight polo shirt that's riding up, I thought it was really funny. Now, I would have liked to have a little more story on Peter Capaldi's thinker. I think, no pun intended, that there was more to explore with him. And while I understand his role and his motivations, I don't know why he has all these things implanted in his skull and what their big purpose is. Now, the banter between the cast worked incredibly well. We can feel tension and distrust, but also camaraderie. As the story goes along, this random group of anti-heroes, they become sort of a family. There was weight and consequence to the story and the actions too. I mean, I felt peril and was genuinely concerned for several of the characters. And the main villain actually really worked, and the story progression to get there made sense and built up appropriately. I also like that there were different levels to the villains and antagonists that are encountered, and some may not be readily apparent at the start. Now, this is way more violent than I thought it would be. The deaths are brutal, gory, and unflinching, and they don't pull any punches. They have very creative ways that are employed to kill people off. And I thought the action sequences were executed really well. There's a good variety of violence here. Sometimes we get close quarters hand-to-hand combat, other times there's one versus many type of scenario. And although slow-mo is used a couple of times, it did work to add dramatic flair in the right moments. It also helps that it was used sparingly so as not to get too annoying in its overuse. The special effects are done really well too. The textures of certain effects blended really well with the surroundings to make them look more natural, even though they are clearly computer generated, just based on size and scale. Gunn is able to take a big cast of characters, most of who are unknown to the casual viewer, and make them relatable or at least sympathetic people you want to root for. I thought that was impressive. And because the stakes are big in this story, none of the characters are safe on screen. I mean, it's almost like Game of Thrones where you become invested in the players, but know that they may not all be there at the end. As I had hoped, the humor is really funny in this. And take King Shark. I mean, if you've seen the trailers, you get a sense of him, but there is a restraint that is used in the script to hold back from making certain jokes go further than they could, which then makes them incredibly funny. The soundtrack in this is just awesome too. The songs fit so well and they complement the scenes and the emotion. Now, I was surprised that this is 2 hours and 12 minutes long. I didn't feel the length in the slightest. The pace was driving and efficient, but it wasn't rushed. Now, probably the weakest portion of the script is the setup of circumstances for why the Suicide Squad is sent on their mission. The shift in governmental power in a small nation isn't particularly exciting, but how the story uses that to create drama and introduce the real threat, it does make for an engaging plot. I'm so glad that James Gunn was given the reins to this story to create a wildly twisted, fun, and engaging action story. You'll want to watch all the way through the credits for a post-credit scene. I'm not sure of the future of the Suicide Squad or the characters that we meet in this one, but I really hope that Gunn is tapped to continue telling their story. He has this amazing knack for crafting exciting and compelling ensemble stories, and I would love to see him do more inside this DC universe. So overall, The Suicide Squad is an enthralling story filled with deeply flawed and entertaining characters that resonate well and exhibit some good growth. The comedy works effectively to balance out the drama and the violence, making this comic book story filled with anti-heroes a ton of fun. If you're looking for a summer blockbuster escape from reality, this is certainly one to check out. Now, while this is coming to HBO Max at the same time it's hitting theaters, if you have the opportunity, this one is a great experience for the big screen. There's sex, nudity, a ton of profanity, and almost non-stop bloody and gory violence. I give The Suicide Squad 4.5 out of 5 couches. Is there a character you're most looking forward to seeing in this? I'd love to know who and why in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.